Welcome to episode 61 of the Oddcast, and we have a jam-packed show as always. We're going to talk about all things the war in Iran, what Trump's up to and what this means for the global fuel shortage, what Albo's up to and how these guys are just trying to string together any little bit of credibility to solve this problem. And of course, as usual, the Liberal Party is shitting the bed in Victoria, so there's a lot to talk about. So grab yourself a drink, strap in. It's time for another Oddcast.
The reality, though, is that I think the bombshell, the thing that Australia should be talking about pretty much relentlessly, is the fact that Donald Trump watches the Oddcast. I think that's the really big bombshell.
I mean, why wouldn't he?
Why wouldn't he? It's not like he's got anything better to do with his time.
He's got to do something between the hours of 3:20 and 3:27.
I get the feeling the bloke doesn't sleep very much. They probably just like plug in a computer spike into the back of his head and just download the Oddcast in a couple of seconds. Like, it's probably all it takes, Matrix style. No. So I spoke about what I would do. So someone asked us a question during one of the live shows, Topher and Carly, what would you do if you were Donald Trump and the war in Iran was happening? How would you solve this? My answer was send a third carrier fleet, brand new, fully armed, fully stocked, ready to go, ready to rock and roll. Tell the world 2 weeks out it's on its way and that it's going to sail through the Straits of Hormuz. Now, he hasn't announced that yet, but I'm sure it's just around the corner. I sent him a text and said, hey, Donnie, are you going to do this or not? The only reply I've had is from the FBI saying that if I try and contact that number again, they'll shoot me or something. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, so he needs to tell the world that he's going to sail it through the Straits of Hormuz 2 weeks out so that the Iranians send all their weapons down into range. Of course, they can satellite surveil all of the movements. They'll know where all the weapons are. They'll know where all the weapons caches are. Then for 48 hours before the carrier fleet arrives, they can just absolutely reshape the coastline of Iran. And then the carrier group can sail through. And of course, it's got all the destroyers and missile defenses and everything else to make sure that nothing bad happens to the carrier group while it goes through. That's how I would personally reopen the Straits of Hormuz if I was Donald Trump. No sooner have I said that than President Donald Trump has announced he is sending the George H.W. Bush aircraft carrier group into the Middle East. Now, he has not yet said that he's going to sail it through the Straits of Hormuz, but I take this to mean that he is listening to me and looking to me for leadership and strategic advice, and that sooner or later he will make that announcement.
It's only a matter of time, but I said to Avi on Monday night that his people are now involved in this, and I meant the Yemenis, the Houthis, trying to block off the Red Sea. And look, part of me, I'm just going to make this comment, and then you guys can all just like drill me in the comments. But I think it's about time that it's like, honestly, just everyone get involved and let's just sort this out. This has been going on for millennia. Let's just fucking go. Everyone, let's just pile in, have it all out, see who comes out on top, and be done with it. Because, oh my God, my whole life has been talking about the Middle East. Like, if it's not Desert Storm in Iraq, it was Syria, and then of course it's Afghanistan, and now it's the Yemenis and Saudi Arabia. And can we just sort it out once and for all? Be done.
I love the idea, but I hate to be the bearer of bad news. There is no such thing as sorting it out once and for all. These are hatreds that have gone on for thousands of years. They're not about to go away. But what I will say is this. All wars fundamentally are actually wars between economies, not between armies. In the short term, they're between armies and military might. But battles can be won by tactics. Wars can be won by strategy, but actually, empires rise and fall on the back of logistics, and logistics is fundamentally an economic issue. What the issue that America has right now is that every time they take out a target, let's say in Yemen, they take out another clapped out Toyota Hilux with a 50 cal mounted to its roof. They've just used a $2 million missile to take out a arguably $20,000 truck plus machine gun combination. And the economics of that are terrible. That means actually you've done yourself more damage than you've done to the enemy every single time you take out one of those targets. One of the things that America hasn't done well enough, but they are now very aware of, and it was highlighted by the war in Ukraine, which I'll touch on in a second, they developed the top-end weapons systems. These things that could do things that no other weapons system could do. They were more precise, they were faster, they could penetrate further. Whatever it was, they could track targets that other missile systems couldn't track. They developed all the top-end stuff, the expensive stuff, but they haven't fleshed that out, in my view, with a deep enough catalog of cheap stuff to take out the cheap targets. You need the expensive stuff to break through the air defense system. When you first go in to invade a country like Iran, they've got all the air defenses up. You need the expensive stuff to take out the radar systems, take out the surface-to-air missiles, degrade their capacity to defend themselves. And America have got that, clearly. What they don't have is the stuff to then bring in on the back of that costs pennies on the dollar to take out inexpensive targets. Now, the Russians, of course, and the Ukrainians, they've turned this into a war of cheap disposable munitions. They're sending little drones worth a couple of $100 across with hand grenades, or little suicide drones where the actual drone itself is the munition. Now they've got counter drone technologies where these Iranian-style Shahed, doodlebug drones that are flying across can now be taken out by, well, that's kind of what they are. There's Ukrainian counter drone sort of drones. Counter drone drones is really the only way to say it, that cost pennies on the dollar compared to the American technology. And so I think what this Middle Eastern conflict is highlighting, and we are hearing certain things from the US military, I think they're very well aware of this problem now. They didn't have the bottom of the catalog filled out in terms of their munitions, which means taking on the Houthis is actually a very expensive exercise. Even though there's a huge mismatch, it's not a military contest. There's no question who's going to win from a military point of view, but who's going to win from an economic point of view, because in the end, that's actually what matters.
The other thing is too, and I would say that, yeah, I get what you're saying about the economic thing, but the ideological thing, I mean, to most of ththese people, humans are disposable. They look at the human as disposable munition themselves, right? Like suicide bombers, terrorists, it doesn't matter the fight that they put them in. That human life to them is disposable. They don't care if it's civilians. That's why they build a lot of their things in hospitals. They take over schools and all that sort of stuff. And I think the biggest underestimation, this is my point of view, by the way, like this is just what I see. The biggest underestimation from both the US and the Western world at large is how that ideology can be weaponized and used to brainwash people in the West. I mean, we're already seeing this. I'm not saying anything new, but what it does is like so for example, that story in Iran that came out about the missile that hit the school, right? Excuse me, for a couple of weeks, no one knew who was actually responsible. And I think it came out in the end, it was the US. But the Iranians,
I would still consider that to be highly debatable, because even the report that claimed it was a US missile system had some pretty big holes in it. So I would argue it's still debatable. But yes, I think the preponderance of opinion is that it was US.
Yeah, right. And I mean, to be honest, we're probably never going to know because of the propaganda anyway. But also, we also know that Iranians use schools and hospitals and private citizens' homes to put a lot of their weaponry in, and that's where they use that's where they put their safe houses and things like that. So, there's a level of this that, like, okay, so the school got bombed, but like people are going to come at me for that. I'm not saying it's good to bomb schools, just to be clear. Like, if you don't have the ability to critically think and realize I'm not saying that, I can't help you. But what I'm saying is, when you are fighting people who don't value human life, who are happy to put missile silos and weaponry in a school or a hospital, and they don't care about the civilian casualties, that if you underestimate that, you're up against something ideological. And what happens is when inevitably civilian casualties occur, it means that the West, the bleeding hearts of the West, the lefties or the progressives go, oh my God, people are dying. Yes, because they don't care. Their own people do not care. I understand you care because in the West, we value human life, but we are fighting people who do not value human life. That's the big one. And like, I mean, we're seeing this now with all of the progressives and the lefties talking, all the anti-war people. I'm anti-war too, but also I don't want to be bombed to smithereens. I don't want to get to a point where, I don't know if someone's going to be a suicide bomber on the train. And how do you combat that? You can't do it with like, oh, please, sir, please don't wear your suicide vest. I'd really rather you didn't blow me up. Like, you have to fight these people on a level that includes violence. And that's the part that just really gets me with this, is because people are like, oh, people are dying. Yes, it's war. War means people die. It's not good. But also we're fighting people who hate us specifically, but also do not value their own people's lives.
Well, this is the thing. When you put your sort of military commander hat on, and that's what these religious ideologies are. They are essentially a military strategy to take over the world. This is the entire purpose of that particular religious worldview, is to justify conquest. When you put your military commander's hat on, the human life is only worth what it costs to replace. That means to recruit and train a replacement individual. Now, in a place like Australia,
there's a reason they're having 6, 7, 8 kids, man.
Well, yeah. And in Australia, I was an Army reservist. I'd never did anything special. I'm not trying to claim anything out of that. But I'm told that by the time I'd gone through all my IETs as an infantryman, through recruit course and everything else, with the ammunition I'd used, the time in training, everything else, they'd spent about $250,000. They spent about $250,000 to get a person, an Australian civilian, up to the standard of Australian infantrymen. That's what I was led to believe back then. I've no idea how true that actually is. Please don't quote me on that number. But we invest pretty heavily into every single one of our soldiers, which means that the life of every soldier on the battlefield, even from an economic perspective, is quite high. You want to make sure that you keep them alive and healthy and well and in the fight, because you spent a lot of money getting that person there. Where you get, whether it's African warlords or whether it's these religious kind of Islamic groups and what have you, where the people come to them cheap, well, they get treated like they're cheap. That's why they get used in the way that they do. That's why suicide bombing becomes an attractive strategy. It's like, well, I place zero value on your life. It doesn't cost me anything to have you blow yourself up and die in that attack.
But
go and do that.
The extra layer to that, of course, is that in the Quran, they believe they'll become martyrs. So there's a psychological warfare to that as well. It's like, like you imagine trying to get an Aussie to sign up to be a suicide bomber or a kamikaze or something like that. There's no way they would, right? Because we value our human lives.
Unless they were a heavily indoctrinated Muslim, that would be the one. And we saw people fly out of Australia to go and fight for ISIS and so forth. So we know that that's possible.
That we know that's my point. The indoctrination under Islamic State or even just Iranians, like under the IRGC and things like that. Like these people are brainwashed to believe that this life is not as valuable as the one they'll be promised after. Whether it's the 72 virgins or they get martyred. So again, that's a whole other layer. You've got people who are willing to be a suicide bomber, willing to put their life on the line because they're promised something in the afterlife, right? Like, again, there's a level of psychology to this that I think we in the West continually underestimate.
Yeah. All right. So do we want to, we've kind of dived straight into the Middle East as a first topic. Do we want to go there and talk a bit more about this third carrier fleet and what's going on with that?
I've got some show and tell.
Ooh, show and tell.
I've got show and tell because we don't do good news anymore. We don't do word of the day.
Not to be confused with Chantel. This is show and tell.
Show and tell. A little while ago, I made a recommendation for a book called The Fourth Turning, and I mentioned that there's another one coming out. So The Fourth Turning came out 30 years ago. One of the authors has since passed away, and the other one has released this one. This is The Fourth Turning is here. So all of the political cycles that we're in, it's basically coming up to, like bringing us up to speed after the last 30 years. And I've been dying to get into this because obviously we knew we were in the hard times. We knew that. I'm like, what happens next? Like, is this going to tell me the future? Do things get better? Because given what's happening with the fuel crisis and obviously another Middle Eastern war, I'm like, surely at some point in reading this book, they're like, and now it's really good again. Like, that's what I'm looking for. So
I wouldn't count on it. Please tell me you open the book and the first thing it says in big bold letters is, I told you so.
Let me get past that.
Sounds like no.
No. But it's talking about winter is here. We are in winter. We did know this, right? We're in the shitty bit. We're in the
winter is coming. Winter is here.
And
to be honest, we're at the start of winter. I've said for a couple of years now, you've heard me say it over and over again, Carly, I believe the future is bright. I believe the future is going to be amazing, but we've got to get through some really shitty years between now and then. I don't know if that's 2 years or 10 years, but I don't think it's more than 10. And I don't think it's less than 2.
If I look back to the last century, things didn't get good again till the late 40s. Yeah. So another 15 years, maybe?
You reckon it'll be that long? Yeah, maybe.
Oh, okay. This is a little segue, but we'll come back to it. I was watching a Tim Pool episode yesterday, or maybe it was the day before, and they were talking about how the Democrats, based with everything that's going on right now, they've come to the agreement that they need a straight white male who's younger to lead the next election for the presidency, right? And obviously everyone's assuming it's going to be Gavin Newsom, which, that's a disaster, but whatever. But they've realized that to try and get things back towards the Democrats, they can't do the DEI. But then Tim Pool was suggesting, and he had another guy on, I can't remember who it was, he said that if they do that, that will be the Trojan horse to bring woke back with a vengeance. And I was thinking about that. And I was like, well, I'm sure they will try. But after everything that has unfolded, after everything that we've all been through, do you really think people will be like, oh, yeah, let's do the trans thing again. That makes sense. Yep, let's keep cancelling people. Because now we brought up Grace Tame last episode where she's now, spitting chips because she's had a lot of her speaking gigs cancelled. Yes, that's what you did to us for the last 10 years. Correct. You're getting a taste of your own medicine.
Can we just take a step back and reflect on one of the world's biggest political parties, the Democrats in the US, Democrats and Republicans being the most powerful two political parties on the planet, with the possible exception of the Crown in the UK, although they're technically not political, but you get what I mean. They're sitting there going, who do we need? And the criteria they go for are DEI criteria. Now, in this case, it's the opposite of what looks like DEI, but fundamentally it is still racism, sexism, it's identitarian politics. Like they haven't actually said, hey, crazy thought, everybody. What if we got someone who has a fucking clue what to do? How about that? Hey, everybody? Yeah? Can we, yeah? No, we're not. Okay, no, we're not doing that. Like, seriously, how is it that they're like, no, the problem isn't that we're defining people by race and sex and age and everything else. The problem is just that we had the wrong criteria. It's like, no. How about you just have no criteria around any of that and just find a competent human being?
Well, this brings me to a really good point. I've got a reel to share with you that has gone.
Oh, we are getting drunk this episode.
Do you know? Okay, so little preface. So
I'm on antibiotics. So I'm on the soft stuff. I can't even get hammered no matter how many reels you play.
Oh, can I tell you a really quick tangent story? Is it too early to tangent? This is so worth it.
It's definitely, my painkillers still haven't kicked in, so it's definitely too early to tangent.
Oh, well, I'm going to tell you the story anyway. I'll come up with another tangent later. We went to dinner the other night, and it was an Italian restaurant, delicious, really good. And at the end, we were like, oh, yeah, we'll get a dessert. And I find it really hard to turn down a tiramisu. Now, I don't drink alcohol, remember? I haven't drunk alcohol in probably 20 years. I don't like the taste of it for no other reason. I literally don't like it. Anyway, we go, and I know tiramisu can have alcohol in it, but it didn't say that it did, and I assumed it wouldn't. So anyway, we get the tiramisu.
It's an Italian restaurant, though. They do the real thing.
Right. And so G got an affogato. So he's pouring his, I don't know, it was like Frangelico or Bailey's on top of it. And he's, eating away. Yeah. My tiramisu comes, and I, grab my scoop, put it in my mouth. And I'm like, it was rocket fuel, right? So, so I know my tolerance is really low. So I'm like, maybe it's just like a little bit. And so I'm trying to be brave, right? I'm shoveling it into my mouth, and I'm like, I can't eat it. I said to G, I'm like, I don't think I can eat this. He's like, what are you talking about? That's like a $20 dessert. You're going to eat it. I'm like, but it tastes not very good. Anyway, I push it over to him. He bites in, and he's like, holy shit, that's just straight booze. So now I'm really upset. So anyway, I couldn't finish it. And even G loves to drink. He was like, that's honestly straight alcohol. So you know how they normally get the biscuits and they put them in coffee?
Yeah.
I think they just put the biscuits in straight booze. Like that was it. There was no coffee.
Yeah. No, it's funny.
Anyway, that's
before you went there, you were about to go to a reel.
Okay. So a quick preface with this.
We were in tangentception.
We are in tangentception. I'm really good at that. It's a pretty good trick of mine. So I put this reel up, and it's performed okay on my own social media, but it came to my attention. People have taken this reel with my own face in it, posted it on their social media, and it's going mega viral everywhere but my own socials. What the hell is that all about?
Man.
Anyway.
Same thing happened with my videos. There's a page on Facebook where I swear 50-60% of what they post is just my stuff that they've ripped off and put up there. But they've managed to build a bigger following somehow. So often, my videos will often get more views with them. don't ask
Well,
me
it's
why.
funny you say that, actually. This is worth talking about. So, you know, Anthony, is it Khalif? The guy, the first
Oz versus the agenda.
Oz versus the agenda, right? Like,
Yeah.
he and I have disagreed a few times. You and I and him had a big spat around the March for Australia. He got really dirty with us. But I really like his work. I think he does fantastic work. I don't have an issue with him personally.
Look, I've met him in person a couple of times, and we actually spoke about the March for Australia stuff in person at an event. And I made it very clear to him, like, because he wanted to kind of mediate. He wants people to get along. And I made it very clear to him. I'm like, I've never burnt down a bridge before, but I burnt that bridge gleefully, and I love the fact that they hate my guts. That is honestly the best thing ever. And it took him a little while to, I think, accept that I'm actually really happy with where I'm at with those people, and I'm not looking to rebuild that bridge. And then once he did, we moved on and talked about other stuff, and it was fine. But I think he, by nature, he wants to build a movement, and we all do, but he wants to believe that we can all get along. And I'm sorry, no, we can't all get along. I believe in a big tent, but yeah. So we're never going to agree on that point, but I think he's one of the good guys in the world for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for those who don't know, I was just looking to see if it's up on his Instagram. I think he posts a lot, so I'm probably not going to be fine. It was a couple of weeks ago, I think now. But if you guys haven't followed him, you should follow him. It's Oz AUS versus Oz versus the agenda. Sorry. He's on Instagram and X, and so what he does is he sits in Parliament and he does the freedom of information request, and he gets a lot of this stuff. Puts it up on his own channels, and then other people steal his content, basically. And he called out a page that I've called out before called The Yarn. And the Yarn, like, Anthony will post something within seconds, it's already up on the Yarn, not adding anything to it. It's just literally basically a repost. And I understand that from Anthony's point of view. Like, he's sitting in Parliament for hours. He's going through all the effort to get the FOIs, and then someone else is just using his content to build a platform. Anyway, thought that was worth bringing up. But back to the original tangent, which it's not a tangent, but I made this, and I didn't think I was saying anything particularly profound, but apparently people were like, this is there. So let's play it. In politics is embarrassing at the best of times, but after the Victorian Liberal Party pre-selection that saw Moira Deeming ousted, it takes things to a whole new level. So let's talk about it. I watched a video from Punter's Politics recently, and whilst we would disagree on a lot politically, he made a fantastic observation. The caliber of our politicians is declining. But I think the conversation stops one layer short of the more interesting question, which is not who these people are, but what kind of system keeps producing them. The Moira Deeming situation gives you a very specific kind of exhaustion that comes from watching something completely predictable play out. Deeming had already been through the whole ordeal: the suspension after attending the Let Women Speak rally, the accusations of Nazi association, the defamation case she brought against John Prosciutto, which she won, and the court ordered him to pay $2.3 million in costs. And despite all that, despite Tony Abbott, Peter Credlin, and even opposition leader Jess Wilson backing her pre-selection, she still lost the ticket to Dinesh Gurushetty, a man the party's moderate wing apparently preferred. Almost immediately, Gurushetty had to step aside after it emerged he had provided a character reference for a now convicted child sex offender. And it's worth noting he also has a history of branch stacking and shady business dealings. Political economist Anthony Downs argued decades ago that democratic systems do not necessarily reward competence or good outcomes, they reward survival. They reward the capacity to navigate internal structures, maintain the right alliances, and remain viable within the specific ecosystem of politics. Instead of, say, farmers discussing feeding the nation, we get lawyers and the unionists cunningly trying to tip the scales in their favor. There is no incentive for genuinely talented people who have built something and have real options to get into politics. Why would you when you're faced with factional warfare, consistent reputational exposure, and a career that can be easily dismantled with a single internal vote? Nearly 40% of all parliamentarians were political staffers before entering office. 5 out of our last 6 prime ministers came from staffer backgrounds: Albanese, Morrison, Abbott, Rudd, and Gillard. These are people who moved from student politics through party rooms and into the highest office in the country without ever inhabiting the real world the rest of us live in. Our political class is a closed-loop system where they recruit from their own interns, and the only life experience those recruits have is advising for and spinning for and sucking up to the politicians who came before them. This is what adverse selection looks like in practice. You end up with someone like Albo, a career politician who has spent virtually his entire adult life inside the Labor machine. He's now lecturing us about carpooling whilst flying around the country in a taxpayer-funded private jet. The hypocrisy is almost poetic, but more than hypocrisy, it illustrates the kind of person these systems systems reliably produce. Someone who governs not with the country's best interests at heart, but with ideological commitments and their personal survival in politics driving every decision. The mistake is thinking those in government have access to some higher wisdom than the rest of us do. Yet those in government at their most generous are deeply shaped by a system that rewards self-preservation above everything else, and at their worst are Machiavellian operators who will do and say whatever is necessary to remain exactly where they are. And until that changes, watch this country decline even further. Yeah. Now, I don't think I said anything that was groundbreaking, but apparently most people haven't thought about that before.
Yeah, it's amazing. So it's almost as if you might have read a book that talks about perverse incentives and in politics and the self-selection and the various layers of selection that take place as people work their way through political parties. No, I'm kidding. You are capable of original thought. I'm not suggesting everything that comes out of your mouth is.
I have read your book though. It made great toilet
Um,
paper during COVID, but I'm joking.
It's sort of, yeah, it is a bit soft. Yeah. I will say there's a point you made in the middle in sort of towards the end there that I think is really important. And it's actually one that I'm going to start majoring on a lot more over the next 2 years. I've already begun.
Are you going to quote me?
Well, no, because my memory's not that good to be able to quote you word for word. But you made a good point, which is that it's less about or the disconnect, the problem, and I don't even have good words for this yet because it's something that I'm only really bringing to the front of my work now. The issue is that they are way less competent than we give them credit for. The issue is not, oh no, because people say, oh, One Nation, they don't have any experience. Well, yeah, but we've seen what the experienced Liberal and Labor Party do and have and what they offer, right? So maybe this experience argument isn't all that it's cracked up to be. This assumption that they have some sort of special insight or special knowledge.
What do you want them to have experience in? Being a parliamentarian? That you want them to have experience in being a staffer? I would argue I'd like them to have real world experience.
Well, the Liberal Party had a crack at Pauline Hanson saying, oh, she's never delivered a budget. It's like, well, yeah, you've delivered budgets and we're $1 trillion in debt. At some point, I'm going to take a risk on a newbie, right? It'd be a little bit like the Victorian government turning around and saying, oh, you don't want Topher involved. He's never organised a Commonwealth Games. Well, yeah, okay, you've tried to organise a Commonwealth Games. That's true. We saw how that worked out. Maybe we'd be better off taking a punt on an unknown than handing it back to the people that completely fucked it up last time.
Jacinta Allen literally came out and said that, I think it was yesterday, about the Liberal Party. She's like, if you can't get your own backroom organised, how on earth do you expect to manage the state? I'm like, mate, big words coming from you. I'd be careful, sweetheart.
So to finish my point, Anders Tegnell was the health minister in Sweden where they chose not to lock down. They were one of the few countries that defied all the hysteria. Yeah, they took some steps, but they left most of it to be voluntary rather than mandatory. And they didn't do any of the harsh sort of crazy stuff that we saw, like what we saw in Melbourne. And he was in an interview. I hope to interview him before I die. He's on my bucket list of interviews. Anders Tegnell, now former Swedish health minister. He wrote in an op-ed, or he said in an interview, I don't remember, that he had a mentor as he was coming up through university studying health and studying epidemiology and all the rest of it. And the mentor used to say to him, there's some phrase, and apparently in the original Latin, it's quite beautiful. It's quite a clever phrase, but it translates roughly to remember with how little wisdom the world is governed. Right? And so it's this keep front of mind that the people in power also don't know what they're doing. Right? And when he was set to defy all of the conventional wisdom and to not do lockdowns and to not do distancing and to not do masks and to not do all that crazy stuff, he called his mentor. I believe his mentor has passed away since then, but he was alive at the time. He called his mentor and he said, am I the crazy one? And he says in this interview that his mentor simply quoted back to him that Latin phrase, remember with how little wisdom the world is governed. And I really feel like that guiding phrase helped Anders to make the right choices for Sweden during the pandemic. And I think if we all had that phrase front of mind, we would be much better placed to make better choices for our families, for ourselves, and our politicians would make better choices on behalf of the country if we just remembered with how little wisdom the world is so often governed.
Well, that's the biggest lie that we're sold as children as well. Like, trust the adults. The adults know what they're doing. Now that I'm an adult, I can tell you now, most adults have no fucking idea what they're doing.
We are making it up as we go along.
Yeah. And I remember, like, I think it was like hitting 30 where I kind of went, wait, I'm the adult in the room, and I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have it sorted out. And like I think I said this like a few podcasts ago when I turned 40. Even now, I'm like, wait, I'm 40. Like,
Yeah,
I'm meant to. No,
I'm
I don't
about to
feel
turn
old in the
44.
head.
I'm about to turn 44. I literally had this conversation with myself as I was falling asleep last night. Bit of a weird, macabre conversation. I was thinking about death, and yeah, as you do, you know, and just realizing how I feel inside my head right now is exactly how I will feel inside my head when I'm on my deathbed, at whatever age that turns out to be. This is me for the rest of my life in terms of my self-perception, in terms of how I exist inside my own head. This is me for the rest of my life. And I don't know if that's good or bad or scary or comforting. I don't know I'm not trying to feel any specific kind of way about that, but just that revelation of, no. This is who I am for the rest of my life. And that's not going to change in any fundamental way unless I actively change it. Age doesn't change you automatically. I don't know what to do with that information, but I was having that conversation with myself last night.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I this is a weird tangent, but I had a similar thought. So
does that mean we need the song? Because the painkillers have kicked in.
Go for it.
Just because I do know we receive way more complaints about me missing the Tangent Time song than about you dropping the C word. I mean, I know we got a lot of complaints about you dropping the C word that one time when it happened. Actually, I think that was me.
Dropped more than I ever have.
I've definitely dropped more than you. But we get inundated with complaints when I don't do the Tangent Time song.
I think Avi and Rukshan were quite shocked that we had the song.
They had no idea what to do. It's so funny because Avi just missed hearing it live when he was at the birthday party. He left only shortly before. Anyway, tangent time, tangent time, tangent time, tangent time, tangent time. Yes. What is your tangent?
I will get you to record that. We'll put it up on Spotify.
I believe we just did record that.
Well, you know what I mean. Anyway, so I was sitting here, right, and thinking about the trajectory of my life, as you do. But one of those moments where you're like, is this it? Is this what I'm doing? And I think maybe the Oddies, like, I'll bring you guys into this. So we're both
being macabre, are we?
Well, I think the Oddies will probably relate to this as well. I'll be interested to read the chat tonight. With everything that's going on, I'm sitting here as a 40-year-old woman where in my lifetime, and obviously your lifetime too, I'm not centering this around me, but, you know, there's always been some kind of war looming or threatening. There's been some kind of crisis, whether it was the GFC or it was COVID or it was September 11. I'm trying to think back into my mind of a time when life was like cruising. And the only time I can think of is pre-September 11, but I was too young to really understand that. I was 14 when September 11 happened. And then I think it was like post-GFC, so maybe like 2009, 10 till around 2015. That was like a little sweet spot in my mind that I can remember. And now at 40, I'm like, okay, we've got Iran breaking out. Things in Australia are going to shit. And G and I have these conversations sometimes. We're like, I don't want to get stuck here, right? Like that's a real conversation we've been having. We're talking about moving to Queensland. And then part of me is like, well, what's the point of moving to Queensland if the whole country is going to shit? You know, you're taxed till your eyes bleed. There doesn't seem to be any hope of us achieving a decent home to be able to afford and buy. And like, you know, so we're having those kind of thoughts. I'm like, what's the point of me saving for a home deposit? I need almost $200,000 to buy a shitty, mediocre house for $1 million. And then I have to just constantly pay tax and tax and tax. You know, those conversations that we're probably all having. And so we toyed with the idea of going overseas and where would we go? And so like, it's easy to talk about, oh, we just move overseas, right? But when you start thinking about that logistically, when you start to break it down, so, and that's what I've been doing. And then I find myself feeling like this overwhelming wave of sadness. Like, it's really easy to throw a blanket statement, oh, we'll just move overseas. But when I've been like, okay, so what would the steps be? Sell everything that we own, say goodbye to all our friends. Like, I've got 2 dogs. What do I do with my dogs? And, you know, do I get rid of my beloved Jeep, the thing I love the most? And yes, I know these are material possessions, but when you talk about actually extracting yourself from your own home country, you start to go, well, shit. Like, you know, and I'm like, and I think the problem is if I had done that in my 20s, I wouldn't have cared. But now I'm in my 40s. I'm a little bit more like I've got a bit stronger roots in the ground. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
it's a little bit harder.
And so I was thinking about this, and I'm like, I don't want to be that person. Like, you've bloody put this into the back of my brain, that the man in Caracas. But then at the same time, I understand why he did become the man in Caracas, where you sit there and go, well, shit, what, like, when do I pull the evacuation, like the ejection handle, right? And so we've been breaking that down and having a think, and G's been toying with the idea of going to Mauritius to suss that out, because that has a massive expat community. And all I could think about is like being marooned in Mauritius. Like I find that quite terrifying. Do you know what I mean? Like, so
yeah.
That's where
so
I
do know exactly what you mean. Just there's a couple of things you touched on. So pre 9/11, it was exactly the same. There was always a crisis around the corner. I'm old enough just to remember the recession we had to have, and obviously didn't affect me. I was a kid, but I was aware that it was affecting the adults around me. 90s.
Was that the 90s?
Yeah.
Okay.
And interest rates hitting 14% and all that sort of stuff, and it feels apocalyptic for the people that are in it, for the people that are facing it. But what I've noticed over time is that the people who do well in life are the ones who get on with it, regardless of the next impending disaster. It's one of the reasons why I try not to buy into the fear mongering, because I've seen too many times in too many different contexts, people putting their life on hold or taking drastic steps in anticipation of a looming disaster. But let's not forget, we see it on social media now. It's very obvious, but it's always been true with the media and with politicians, that selling you on fear is the fastest way to get you to do whatever I want you to do, whether that's sell you something, vote for me, support a cause, whatever it is. Fear is the biggest motivator. That's been true for thousands of years. So that's always been true. We've always been just around the corner from yet another disaster. However, I also agree with your overall sentiment that staying in Australia may not be the best or the right choice. And I've told this story before. I'll tell it again very briefly. My wife and I made the decision we wanted to get out of Victoria. That was a given. We were definitely getting out of Victoria, and we weren't moving to Sydney or Brisbane or any other capital city in Australia. So what we did was we did a 1-month road trip. We went up inland through Griffith, Mudgee, Tamworth, up to Toowoomba, and then we went across to Brisbane, and we came down the coast until south of Wollongong. Came through the floods and everything that were happening up in Lismore at the time. And saw all of that and tried to help with a bit of the cleanup, but we were just more in the way than anything else with a couple of kids in tow. So we just had to get out of the area and leave that. But we saw the southeast corner of this beautiful country, inland, coastal, staying in over 30 different towns along the way, right? So staying overnight in 30 different towns along the way. Beautiful country, beautiful people, lots of great little towns, nowhere that felt like home. And it was only by happenstance, Albury was not on my list, and it was only by happenstance that we stayed here for 2 nights and sort of went, oh, hang on, actually, this is actually really nice. We really like it here, and we decided to move here. But up until that moment, we were driving from the coast towards Albury, essentially with a failed trip. The trip had failed. We had not found anywhere that we went, you know what, that's where I want to live. Lots of lovely places to visit, but nowhere that we wanted to live. And we were seriously having a conversation about moving to the Caribbean coast of Mexico. That's the Gulf Coast of Mexico. That's where we probably would have gone. And you're quite right that there's a world of difference between the statement, I'd leave Australia, and the statement, I would move to X, Y, or Z. Those two statements, there is a world of difference between those two. But we were absolutely sincere. And I'm still very serious about getting a second passport. I'm still very serious about getting structured offshore, having residency options offshore. But for me, it's not about right now. It's not about jumping ship. It's about having options open. I'll keep fighting for Australia. Even if I leave Australia, I'll keep fighting for Australia. I'm going to end up doing lots of work in the US. I'm probably going to end up splitting my time between the US and Australia. It's just an economic reality that if I want to make this work financially for my family, then I need to be in the US market. But I care about Australia, and this is where I want to be. I want Australia to thrive and succeed and to be an amazing place once again. And so I'll probably end up splitting my time, but I want to be an Australian and I want to be in Australia. But I'm not going to go down with that ship, and I am going to put in place contingencies because there comes a point where you realize no matter how quickly you're trying to patch up the holes in the bottom of the hull, if all the people around you are smashing the holes and making them bigger, at some point you got to give up and just go, okay, kids, wife, we're getting off this boat. Now, I don't think we're there yet, and I don't think we have to get there. I don't think it's inevitable that we will. And I'm actually really optimistic. I think with what we're seeing happen with One Nation right now, what we're seeing around the world, AfD in Germany, Le Pen in France, we're watching some really amazing things happening around the world. Milei in Argentina, Trump in the US. I don't think this has to end in a post-apocalyptic kind of a scenario, but we do have to get through some hard times to get to the good ones.
I think the other thing as well, and I mean, Avi made a really good point on Monday that what you see online
Fake
isn't
news.
necessarily.
It's never happened. Avi, good point. Never.
What we saw online what we see online is often a very small section of how people actually
100%.
think. And I have to remind myself of that, right? You know, I spend a lot of my time on the internet, and sometimes when I see the comments, even on my own reels, I go, Jesus, like, is this the state of it? But, you know, I was having a good chat with my girlfriend this morning, Sally, and she's sort of taken the view, like, she understands what's going on, but also for her own mental health, she's got a young kid as well. She's like, I can't have that in my head. She's like, I understand it. I know it's terrible, but for me to be a good parent, I can't be caught up with that. And I was 100%. Like, you know what, there's certainly a level of that. And I think that's, you know, I'm pretty hard on Australians at times and saying like that we're apathetic. But I think a lot of it's also survival. A lot of it's like, I can't be bogged down with all this. And I've seen this recently in the last 2 weeks with G. He was on X like I'm on Instagram, right? That was his platform of choice. And just reading every new update, everything as a blow by blow, play by play, comment by comment. And so he was on top of everything, but it was really like bringing him down. He had like these moments where he's just like, it's fucked, Carly. Everything's fucked. I'm like, no, the sun's shining today. Like, no, we've got money in our
birds are still tweeting.
Yeah, like, no, it's not quite fucked. And then he was like, I'm just going to have a break from X. He hasn't been back on it since. And he's like, it's not that bad.
Life's not that bad.
Don't get me wrong, there are still obviously problems, but when you're not like looking at everything through a microscope, you know, you get a bit more clarity, I think.
And this is one of the reasons why I don't want to do what I'm doing right now forever, because it requires me to be in the muck. And I have ambitions of shifting my work, and you know, I've got a pathway for how I want to do that over the next 5 years, and what I want to do and where I want to get to and all that stuff. It's necessary.
What will you do if you weren't a political commentator?
That's a tangent too diverse even for the Oddcast. I'll answer it with this. I have ambitions of hosting a self-produced show that brings together micro dirty jobs, Jeremy Clarkson's farm, not Top Gear, but Clarkson's farm, micro dirty jobs, with a little bit of Smarter Every Day. Pull those three things together and make it a show, a formatted television style regular show. That's what I would like to do. And I've got a pathway to get from where I am now to get to there within the next 5 years. A lot has to happen for that to be successful. But see, here's the thing. Mike Rowe talks politics all the time, and he has for decades. But most people didn't realize he was talking politics, because actually what he was doing was making a really fun, entertaining show about people who make a lot of money doing dirty jobs, cleaning porta potties, you know, raising reindeer above the Arctic Circle, fishing for deep sea, you know, whatever, salmon off the coast in terrible weather.
Crabs in the North Sea.
Yeah, I remember one where there was a dude who was just in the backwoods of Tennessee somewhere, and he was making shingles on a steam-powered machine that his grandfather had bought. He'd just inherited from his dad the machine that he'd inherited from his dad, and he was just out there getting lumber and curing it and storing it and making sure it was ready, and then slicing it in exactly the right ways and shipping it off as shingles. And that was his thing. You know, Mike Rowe was constantly talking about over-regulation, taxation, how hard it is to start a business, the futility of so many, and the craziness of so many university degrees, the dignity of hard work and a blue-collar job and actually just doing something that makes people's lives better. He was a cultural and political commentator in a very deep and real sense. But that's not why people tuned in. They tuned in because he was good looking. He's got a great jawline. No homo, but let's be honest, he's a good looking bloke. And he's funny, and he can talk, and he personalizes people, and it's entertaining.
Clarkson's Farm's the same. Jeremy Clarkson's hilarious.
It's highly political. It's highly political. Now, he's actually a bit more overtly political as the seasons go on, and he starts to get into his run-ins with the council. He becomes more kind of gloves off political. But even from the outset, he's talking about the subsidies and the this and the that and the realities of being a farmer before he gets into a locks horns with his local council. It's all quite political. So what I would like to do is to segue, and it actually relates to the car that I want to build. That will be a central character, so to speak. The building of that car will be a thread that unites all of the episodes. But ultimately, I want to get to the point where, I'll still be extremely political, but people will be tuning in for the entertainment rather than for the politics.
I'm seeing a real shift in that at the moment. You know those reels I keep putting up and I keep making you watch. The reaction
I do.
I did one about witchery, which I didn't play on the Oddcast. I'll spare you, but it was basically talking about the beige of fashion, right? And how in Australia the industry here is very, very sanitary and whatever. I won't bore you with the details. And the first one went mega viral. And have I told this? I don't think I've told this story yet.
Not on the Oddcast, no.
I deliberately wore a blue sweater that looked like the blue sweater that Anne Hathaway wore in The Devil Wears Prada. There's a really famous scene about the cerulean blue. And then I even edited it in post to try and make it more cerulean because it's actually more purple. Anyway, and I was like, I just wonder if anyone gets the reference. I thought it was really overt. I thought it was so obvious. Anyway, the reel went mega viral. I mean, mega. Like someone in the fashion industry in Australia saw it and sent it to everyone. Because the people commenting it, I had like the CEO of Subi commenting on my reel. I had people from all walks of life. And then interestingly, a lot of people who I follow myself, who I look up to, commented and said, bravo, keep going. I'm like, holy shit, I didn't know you would agree with me. I was really shocked. Like one of the founders of Sass and Bide, Heidi Middleton, she followed me and I'm like, whoa. Like she's an icon to me. Anyway. What was interesting is like I presented my argument, but I did it in a way that was like a little bit entertaining, educational. It was my opinion wrapped up with some facts, right? And that's my own little sweet recipe that I've been doing for my Instagram reels.
Sure.
And since that, my following has grown by 25,000 people on Instagram in the space of a month.
Yeah.
And it's because I think that the things are shifting. People don't want to be told to buy shit. They don't want to watch Get Ready With Me. So they don't want to watch you do your makeup. They want to learn something. They want to look at someone that they like and learn from you. And I think it's called like edu entertainment. And I think that comes about, right, because you're not getting this in school. You're not getting it at university. And unless you're doing some really, really like decent professional development, where are you learning this stuff? Unless you're ambitious in yourself to go and do that, which I am, right? Like I don't have ADHD, but I probably do. Like I am that person. You know, I've been doing the videos on Stalin for God's sakes and just giving people like this is you could Google this stuff in minutes and get it yourself. But because I'm presenting it in a way with my voice and the way I'm doing it, people like, wow, I've been waiting for this content. And so there's so many opportunities out there to reinvigorate education in a way that's entertaining and it's done through someone who you actually like, right? Like we talk about parasocial relationships all the time. You know, if there's someone online whose presence you particularly enjoy, you are going to watch them talk about, you know, true crime stories or politics.
Whatever it may be.
You're getting the political content without the, you know, the Andrew Bolt sitting at a Sky News desk kind of thing.
I'm aware that we actually technically haven't kicked off our first topic yet. And we've covered a lot of ground, but technically we're actually still in a segment. We're still in a segment. We're still in a tangent.
All right. Here's my next story. I'm blinding you with this. I haven't given you any.
All right. Now, before you do that, can we go back to the opening story? Because I'm sure once we leave it, we won't go back to it, which is Iran and the third.
We can after you watch this. This will be short because this is my mate. And I need you to know how awesome he is. All right, you ready?
Okay.
I'm gonna play this from the start.
Of course. Everybody get drunk.
Look what he's done to El Salvador.
I am safe. I am enough. I trust myself. I follow my heart. I go my way.
Is this banned cars? Is that what this is about?
I walk this path.
No, it's how clean it is.
Day by day.
Gardens are redone.
I am in my power.
Restored all the beautiful buildings.
In my flow. I don't need to change. I'm already home.
Anyway, you get the drift. My point is, all of this is possible. We like I've told you about this through Chicken in the Noodle Aisle. I've told you this through gutter gardens. It's possible. We could do this. We just need to give a shit.
Just marry him already, okay? Just marry him and put us all out of our misery.
Him. Maybe he can give me an honorary El Salvadorian citizenship.
Maybe that's where whatever weird relationship you and G are trying to have with Niab is none of my business. But just can we put it to bed already? All right.
I just love
the guy's great. The guy's great.
He's literally just like, you know what I mean? Anyway,
that's going to get clipped. My segment. That's going to get clipped for sure. All right. we got to finish off the Iran war stuff before we get to petrol stuff and other things. So third aircraft carrier moving into the area is going to have a bigger impact than most people think, because actually one of the two aircraft carriers out there at the moment, I think it's the Gerald R. Ford, actually had a fire in its laundry on its way through the Mediterranean as it was heading towards the area. So it offloaded a bunch of aircraft, etc., that are now operating out of other US bases, and it is now in port in, I think, Croatia, getting a partial refit. So they had a fire. It affected some of the crew berthing areas and some of the laundry facilities. Let's not forget, aircraft carriers are massive. There's thousands of people that live on board. There are entire towns essentially within that aircraft carrier. There are people who will go on deployments and will never leave one subsection of the aircraft carrier. Like they spend all of their time, their entire deployment is in this one little area. And they had a fire. It took a couple of hours to bring under control, and obviously that's something they want to get fixed. So in practical terms, in terms of actual operations, there is only one aircraft carrier group currently involved in the war in Iran. There's another one in the area, but it's not actually directly involved. They're not launching air raids off the flight deck on anything resembling a regular basis. So a third carrier group is actually kind of a second. It's kind of a bringing that one in. Now, will he do what I want him to do, which is sail it through the Straits of Hormuz? I sincerely doubt it. That is a very high-risk maneuver. It's a high-reward maneuver, but it's a very high-risk maneuver. And Donnie's got balls, but does he have that kind of? I don't know. That's a bold move, Cotton. It would flush out all of the Hornets. And look, carrier groups are big things. Let's not forget, this isn't just about the ship itself. This is about all the other ships and support vessels around it, the submarines. The Straits of Hormuz, is a couple of dozen miles wide, but actually the traversable width is much narrower than that. So you're going to be putting that aircraft carrier onto a very well-known track. China, Russia, not to mention Iran and others, are all going to take an interest in what happens. So that would be a very, very high risk play. I think I would do it. I think if I was in Donald Trump's shoes, I would
sacrificing one of his carriers, though, like those things are worth almost $1 trillion.
No,
with
but here's the thing:
3,000 souls on board.
Yeah, no, but I just don't believe that would happen. Think about it. If you've already got all of this surveillance and overwatch in place, you put your listening devices down underwater. You've got all your surveillance above. You can see every vessel that moves, everything that happens. You can hear everything that happens. You watch every single missile get moved, every single facility that starts to prepare. You bomb the absolute crap out of them for 48 hours beforehand. You have aircraft in the air, and you have ships with anti-missile capabilities and anti-drone capabilities running a screen the whole time. I think you get through without any damage to the aircraft carrier. I can't say for sure no damage to any other support vessel. But remember, this is war. We can't be sitting here saying no damage is acceptable. We have to say we're going to roll the dice. We're going to take a risk, because what this does is, number one, there is no other country in the world that is going to pretend they could pull that off. There is no other country in the world that is going to be able to say, oh no, we're a peer for, China's going to sit there and go, okay, yeah, you know what, we're not on your level. Number two, the ability for the insurance companies to maintain their withdrawal of insurance, the Lloyd's of London's and the City of London insurance companies to maintain that withdrawal of insurance because of war risk. When an American carrier group is just sitting there, that's going to get really difficult for them to explain and maintain. And so you get the oil flowing again, and you've got the entire world owes you a big one at that point in time. High risk, high reward. I think I would do it if I was the US leadership. I would say this is how we're going to play this game. We are going to, because it's the ultimate we don't fuck around statement to the entire planet. But I don't think he's going to do it.
Do you know what? There was an X post, and you guys probably saw it. It went mega viral, and it's talking about how Donald Trump is single-handedly restructuring the entire world, right, geopolitically through a whole bunch of chess moves. And take it with a grain of salt. It was just someone who was connecting all the different things, basically realigning the US as the superpower of the world and making sure that the rest of the world is dependent on America in some way for energy. And it outlined a whole bunch of things, stuff that you and I have talked about at length on the podcast. Yeah. And I can't help but feel like if I was to trust my spidey senses for what it's worth, and they're rarely wrong, I think that was kind of Trump's goal all along. I've told you he wants to be the legacy president. He wants to be the dude with his face on Mount Rushmore, right? Like this is Donald Trump's legacy. Which is why he doesn't really care about like Greta Thunberg calling him a pedophile and all that sort of stuff. Like I'm sure it annoys him, but he's like, bitch, get in line. Like wait till you see what I'm actually doing. And should things work as I expect they're hoping them to, I mean, it would be fair to say exactly what I said at the opening of this Oddcast is that we might see some level of peace in the Middle East, but I don't know. I mean, that's ambitious.
Well, and understand as well, though, that Trump is America first. He's been very upfront about this. So he said recently that he would consider a peace deal with Iran that leaves the Straits of Hormuz closed. Now, I don't think that's actually true. I don't think he actually would. That would cost him too much face if that was the case. But I think it's useful to him for the EU and for China and for others to believe that he would do that. Because what he wants is American energy dominance. I've talked about this before with making the EU sign this $750 billion 3-year energy deal with the US. Why? To pull them further away from China and to use the energy crisis in the Middle East as an opportunity to pull them further away from the Middle East as well, to deepen the economic and energy ties between Europe and the US. From the US perspective, they're not immune, but they are not very vulnerable to energy shocks right now. Compared to Australia, compared to most of the rest of the world, they have the ability to be self-sufficient. All they would have to do if there was a real energy crisis, I mean, like a proper full-on one, all they would have to do is stop their exports because they have the refining capacity. That's what we don't have. We export plenty of energy. We produce plenty of energy to supply all of our needs, but we don't have the industrial capacity to refine it into the form that we need it. America does. And that's a massive difference. So from Trump's point of view, he is America first, and he can play games like saying, well, hey, I mean, if the Straits of Hormuz remain closed, it's not really any skin off my nose. My country's going to be fine. I've always said I was America first. Again, I don't think he means that. But as a piece of leverage in negotiation, I think it's useful to him that other people think that he might actually consider doing such a thing. I think you're right. In the end, he cares about his legacy, but in the meantime, he doesn't care what people think of him. And I think that's a really powerful combination.
Yeah, I think so too. And if I've learned anything doing this podcast with you is like, man, people will just say whatever anyway. Like, you hear a couple of things and you go, oh, ouch, that's really mean. And then you get to a point where you're like, whatever.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, whatever.
Meaningless.
Yeah.
All righty. That's the Middle East.
All right. I do have this article that I thought was worth bringing up. Where is it? We'll get to more redeeming, but I feel like we've talked about that. This is kind of on the oil topic.
Yeah, we should probably do like the petrol stuff in Australia before we move away from all of that entirely.
This came to my attention through one of the Sushi Mango boys. He did a video on it, like a skit.
Right.
But this is about, in Queensland, there is a lake the size of Singapore full of oil that we are yet to extract.
Yep.
And I thought, isn't that always the way? So there's a map. For those who can't see the screen, there is maybe about 300 kilometers from Brisbane. There is this massive oil reserve we haven't mined for. We haven't got anything out from it yet. And they're thinking that as early as the end of this year, they'll verify whether or not it's good to get out of the ground. Yep. Why the fuck weren't we doing this before? Why is it
because of net zero?
Yeah, exactly.
Because of the BS narrative that this is old technology and we're moving on from this. We don't need to exploit or expand any of it. It would be a malinvestment. Private companies don't even want to invest in this. They all want to put their money into windmills and batteries and solar farms. Well, yeah, because that's where all the subsidies are. You go.
You read this here, it says, while it doesn't offer immediate relief from the ongoing shortage, if it is deemed usable, oil could be extracted from the site as early as 2028. I thought by 2030 we were meant to be net zero.
Well, yeah, I mean, all of that's out the window now, and yeah, it's been really interesting.
This
has been really polarizing.
Bullshit climate change and all this stuff was. It's all. I mean, we knew this, but it's always been political. It was as superficial as a fucking puddle.
So, well, no, I don't think it's superficial. It's been worth a lot of money to a lot of people, and it's been worth a lot
of it.
Well, yeah, but it's given a lot of people street cred and social power, not to mention political power. So a couple of things on there. What we're looking at is the opportunity cost of the net zero fantasy. Not only did we malinvest an enormous amount of money into the wrong technologies, we failed to continue to develop and look after the right technologies. So we've been shutting down coal-fired power plants. We've not been replacing them with new ones. We haven't been maintaining or life extending the ones that we've got in any meaningful way. You know, there's things you can do. This is pretty rock solid, proven technology. You can keep these machines running for a very, very, very long time if we had taken the right steps along the way. But if you don't take those steps along the way, then ultimately, yeah, they life out and you've just got to scrap them and replace them. And that's where we're at now. We could have been expanding our onshore gas production, oil production, etc. We weren't, because we were told, again, you know, all of that's old technology and we're moving away from it. So that's the opportunity cost side of it. But this spike in petrol prices has been really interesting to watch online, because I follow, the same as you, I follow a lot of people I disagree with as well as a lot of people I agree with, and I try and get a pretty good cross section. I know a lot of people do. I'm not trying to pretend I'm unique, but I'm watching, and simultaneously the people who are like me and think that net zero is nonsense, excuse me, are sitting here saying this oil shock is proof that we need to develop our oil and gas and blah 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 and be self-sufficient. Meanwhile, the pro-net zero people, the electrification people, are saying this oil shock is proof that we can't rely on oil anymore, and we have to just accelerate the speed with which we electrify and go all electric. And I'm just sitting there going, it's such a perfect example of a Rorschach test, where people take the exact same information, but they can clearly see whatever it is that they wanted to see in the first place.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I mean, there's moments where, I mean, I read you that comment I got on Monday. I see that and I'm like, just leave it. You cannot fix these people, right? They're hell bent. And the issue is that they're so right in their own brain. Like, even if you presented them all the facts, redundant, doesn't matter. They don't care.
No, so, because it wasn't facts that made up their opinion in the first place.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day too, when it comes to a lot of these people who are ideologically opposed to us, they care about feelings above all else, right? And whatever, that's you. Most people, they care about dollar. At the end of the day, money talks. And if you are finding that your hip pocket is hurting because of decisions that aren't necessarily your own, whether it's through the government or industry regulation, you're going to get up and fight for it. And that's what we're seeing now. We've got industry's been fighting this for ages. People who are feeling like the weight of all these industrial reforms, all the extra layers of permits and zoning and all that sort of stuff. Industry's been crying out. Now, thanks to this fuel crisis, people paying, almost $3-4 for fuel. People are like, this is fucked. It's hurting me, cost of living. Great. More and more people are now. What is it at the end of the day that's getting everyone upset? Money. Money.
Correct.
That is what motivates nearly everyone. The problem with a lot of these ideological zealots is they don't care about money because they've never had any. Do you know what I mean?
All right. So let's talk about what's happening with the government's responses to the fuel shortage. So for the purposes of this conversation, I'm going to put aside two things. I'm going to put aside the fact that we should never have been in this situation in the first place. And it was the government that got us here because they regulated our domestic supply out of existence. I'm not suggesting, and I will not suggest, that the government should subsidise the industry to keep it going from a national security perspective. I just think the government should stop crushing Australian industry under the weight of red tape, green tape, unnecessary regulation, human resources regulation, and stupendously high cost of doing business. If we just fixed those problems, we would have a domestic industry because it would be profitable. Yeah, just those little tiny problems. So I'm putting all of that aside. Okay, we shouldn't be here, but we are. So now what should the government do about it? And as a libertarian, I hate the very idea of the question, what should the government do about it, is a horrible question. But the fact is, this is where we are. We live in a country that expects the government to do something. The do something reflex is well and truly kicked in. And so what are the least bad options? And what have they done and what should they have done? Well, there's a couple of interesting things. I have been on the record, and I've copped a bit of flack, but actually surprisingly quite a lot of support. A lot more people than I expected understand this, that we should not be cutting the fuel excise right now, because that will cause people to be able to buy more. And that's the whole, it's popular. You can fill your tank for less money now. Well, that's great, but it means people fill their tank when some of them would not have. And that means that the shortage gets worse, not better. And how do you fix a shortage? Well, the price has to keep rising until demand falls to meet supply. And so if you now cut taxes off the price, then the price has to rise even higher in order for it to actually ultimately achieve the objective, which is to reduce demand. So that's a counterproductive move. It's politically popular. The Liberal Party have advertised their economic illiteracy because they were the ones demanding that the government do it. They were putting Albo under pressure and using it as a political weapon against him. He's had to fold. And I think it's a terrible thing, and it's just advertising ignorance on both sides. So that's that.
Well, that's the whole, like what I said in the reel. It's about political point scoring. They don't care about whether or not it's good for the people long term.
Correct. It's not even long term. This reduction will be gone from the retail price within probably a week.
Yeah.
Right. The retail price has to keep climbing until demand drops. And if you just cut taxes off the top of that price, and the price has to jump up through that, it's not price gouging, it's price trying to find the necessary level to curb demand. That's literally what's happening. Anyway, another thing that governments have done is they have removed the heavy vehicle road user charge. Now, this is a more constructive step, right? One, because it targets an industry that we need, but is being hurt particularly badly by the rising cost of fuel. That is the transport industry, heavy trucking industry. Two, because it doesn't actually reduce the cost of the fuel itself. So they're not messing with the price signal of the fuel itself. We need that price signal to be there to do its job. But they are helping those companies to be able to survive, those businesses to be able to survive in the bigger picture. So I actually approve of that as a temporary measure. Okay, that's fair. That's good. We've seen Victoria and was it Tasmania announcing free public transport, I think for 3 months. This won't make much of a difference. That's very beneficial
for the rural people, isn't it?
Yeah, that's all the tradies. The tradies are going to just get on the train with their 1.5 tons of tools.
Just on that, let's just stay on that for 2 seconds, because I've seen Greens people come out and be like, oh, you know, they make all these stupid TikTok-y things right now. Like, this is what they do on the public dime. And they're like, oh, just a couple of Greens girlies going to Parliament to ask for free public transport. And they're like, this is such a great thing. All the Greenies are saying that. And then everyone else is like, cool. Me as a tradie who has to come into your apartment and fix your sink, I'm going to do that. And thankfully they're getting destroyed. But this is how insular these people are. Like, they do. They live in the north side. They live very close to a tram line. And to them, why aren't you all doing that? Well, where I live, there is no public transport. I have to drive.
So I will say, however, as far as ideas go to respond to the current situation that we're in, that's actually not a bad one. It won't make much of a difference because for a lot of people, it's just not an option no matter what. But it will make a small difference. And at the moment, I think small differences are better than no difference. So I'm actually going to put a tick next to that one, even though it's essentially a taxpayer subsidy. Because that's what it means. It means that taxpayers are temporarily paying for the entire cost of public transport.
Just say, like, I'm going to disagree with you on that. I get what you're saying from like, oh, at least they're doing something, but the people benefiting from that are the people who would already be using public transport. They weren't impacted by the petrol prices. I'm sorry, I don't use public transport. I don't see that as an incentive to start using it at all.
No, look, I lived in Preston. I grew up in Preston, which at the time when I was growing up there, it was outer northern suburbs. And by the time I stopped living there in my 20s, it was inner, trendy northern suburbs. We had trams, we had trains, we had buses. There are a significant number of people, there's probably 1 million or so people that live in Melbourne in an area where they could, if they chose to, take a tram or a train. And most of the time they're choosing not to. And this will change the behavior of a few 100,000 people, probably. That would be my guess. And again, I'm not approving of government subsidized public transport. I'm just saying, in the situation that we're in where the government is going to do something, let's have a look at what's being done and whether it helps or not. I think this moves the needle a small amount in the right direction. That's my take on it. Sure. Then we've got the government has allocated $3 billion towards government underwritten orders, supplies, trying to buy supplies to come in. Again, as a libertarian, I don't approve of any of this. We shouldn't be in this problem in the first place. The government is the reason we have this problem in the first place. But given that we're here, this is not a terrible response. One, because, again, we need the price signals to work. The Bowser prices being high in Australia, people say, oh, they're just making a huge profit. Well, no, what they're doing is they're sending a signal to the global market. Hey, ship to Australia. Don't ship to some other place where the prices aren't as high. Ship to Australia. You'll make an extra $1 per litre. You'll make an extra 10 cents per litre. On a tanker scale, that's an enormous amount of money. But then you need the importers to have the available cash to be able to buy. And if the value of crude oil has doubled, then all of a sudden one tanker costs twice as much. They don't necessarily have the cash available, the line of credit available with the banks to fund the tankers, even if they were available at that price. So the government stepping in and saying, hey, we're putting aside $3 billion here that is going to help to co-fund or to fund these tankers to get them into Australia and improve supply. Actually, you know what? Again, putting aside my libertarian ideals, actually not a terrible response. This is kind of recognizing the market realities, making it possible to bring in a high-value commodity, a very needed commodity, into Australia to be sold at its proper retail price. That's probably one of the better moves that I've seen out of all of them so far. I quite like it, and it could have a very positive impact within a matter of 3 weeks, 4 weeks, as opposed to things like the Queensland Basin, which should be mined, absolutely, but that's on a timescale of years.
Yep.
So that's my roundup of the major news on that front.
I just saw then, I just got a notification from the Australian that Jim Chalmers is announcing some help for small businesses. So people, I'll just bring it up, sorry. Where is it?
Are they going to call it Job Keeper and Job Seeker? And,
no. So
you're back into 2 weeks to flatten the curve here.
It feels eerily similar, doesn't it? So small businesses.
You're going to make a viral clip about how hard this is for small business and watch it go viral to 40 million people?
Oh, God, no. I don't want to do that ever again. Small businesses are paying the price of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, with Treasurer Jim Chalmers unveiling new measures to ease pressure on the sector. These include temporary relief from the ATO for businesses unable to meet tax obligations due to fuel supply disruptions, offering more flexible payment terms, remission of interest and penalties, and assistance with pay-as-you-go installments. The ATO will also scale back compliance activity in the hardest-hit industries, pausing some debt collection actions where appropriate. A dedicated channel will be established to allow small businesses to apply for relief measures. He also flagged the government would extend the so-called small business responsible lending obligation exemption for anyway, I find that really interesting because one of my good clients is also my accountant, and he was telling me the other day how ruthless the ATO is at the moment. They are out for blood. They are not negotiating. They're not waiving penalties. There's fees everywhere. Like, they are the worst they've ever been. And then to have them turn around and go, actually. And doesn't that annoy you? Imagine this. 6 months ago, you paid your taxes, you paid a penalty because you lodged late or whatever, and it cost you $1,000. I think it's like $1,200 now if you lodge late. So you did all that, and now just a couple of months later, the ATO is like, don't worry about it, we'll be good. Wouldn't you be pissed?
Yeah, but it's the same as people who paid off their HEX debts and did all the right things, and then all of a sudden the government comes out and goes, we're going to wipe 20% off. Like, you can't help. You can't do that kind of a favor for one group without having inherently screwed over another group, not to mention the fact that everything the government does is funded by somebody else. So, look, the whole thing's a debacle. I find universally, Liberal and Labor, their attitudes towards taxation is absolutely abhorrent. I can find no defensible distinction between government and organized crime. I just can't. I just can't. And people say, oh, it's because, organized crime, well, they're criminals. They're the bad guys. They use the money to do bad things. Well, no, not always. There have been parts of Mexico, not so much now, but you go back 15, 20 years, there were parts of Mexico where the people wanted the cartels to run them, not the Mexican government to run them.
It's like the people of Medellin with Pablo Escobar. He did a lot.
100%. They fund the schools. Well, why do they fund the schools? Oh, it's so they can recruit the kids into the gangs. Yeah, just like the governments fund schools and then recruit kids to being police officers and into the military and all of the rest of it. Like, you understand, these two things are basically identical, right? We take your money, we spend most of that money on ourselves, we spend a bit of that money on stuff that you guys like, and then you become the pool of people from which we recruit the enforcers that keep this pool of people in line. That's the business model of organized crime and government. I cannot see the distinction. I can't.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
The ATO are one of the enforcement arms of the organized crime cartel that runs the continent called Australia. That's literally what it is.
100%. I don't disagree with you. It's I find it very, very interesting times ahead. And we talk about tough times. I think, I don't ever think we're going to see us physically locked in our homes again. I know that some of the language has been quite cavalier, particularly like Albo saying, carpooling, people saying work from home, all that sort of stuff. I understand everyone's fear. I honestly think if Albo or even Jacinta Allen or a premier was to say, hey, you need to stay at home, guys, that is political suicide right now. I get it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I've been watching the woke right again for the lack of better description. All the conspiracy, the conspiracy ones, and they're so far down this loop. They're like, the Desi Freeman getting shot is a conspiracy. It didn't actually happen. It's distracting you from the lockdowns that are coming because of the fuel crisis. I'm like, take a breath. Take a breath.
100%.
If you were Albanese, the last thing you want to do right now is piss off more people. His views are in the toilet. What do you call? No, his views.
His polls.
His polls are in the toilet. Allen's polls are in the toilet. It's an election year. You really think they're going to lock us down? Come on. Be smart.
It's the Labor did very well in South Australia because of very specific South Australian reasons, and Peter Malinauskas actually being a competent human being, which is pretty rare for someone who makes it into the position of leadership of any political party. But that's the outlier. That's as good as it's going to get in this round of elections. We've got Victoria coming up in November. We've got New South Wales, I think, next year. We've got federal either very late next year or more likely early the year after. Labor is under pressure in all of these. And the last thing they want to do right now is have something like this hanging around their neck. I mean, they will, if they do try and do something like this, they will try and make it all about Trump. They will, it'll be the orange man bad. It's the orange man bad war. He caused it all to happen. He's the big bad wolf here. But I just don't think people will buy it, and I don't think people will comply with it.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be interesting. I do love watching all of these people come out stoking more fear, and it just kind of, I look at them at this point, I'm like, again, I come back to my sentiment: stay away, don't pay attention to these people. They're just going to make you miserable.
Look, to be fair, I think things are going to get worse. I think pump prices do need to get higher. I've said that already. I think we need to see them at $5, $7 a litre. That's probably where we need to be in order for demand to actually get curbed down to the level where we've no longer got shortages and farmers can actually get the diesel that they need. It's too late to avoid any interruption of food supply. There will be some, and with each passing day, the amount gets a bit more severe. I don't think we're headed for starvation in Australia. I don't think it'll be even close. But I do think we're probably headed towards substitution. We're headed towards a situation where fast forward 3 months to 6 months, there will be things that aren't available on the shelves anymore, and you're having to buy something different instead. I don't know exactly what those things will be, but I think there will be shortages as a result of what's happening right now. I think where it will be devastating is the same place that COVID lockdowns were devastating, and that is in countries where survival on a food price basis is already marginal. The people that are already struggling to get to eat enough food to keep themselves and their kids alive, those are the people that will suffer as a result of this way more than we will. But we haven't seen the full impact yet. I mean, that's why I've it's a half joke. I've said, prepper mode enabled as underneath my name today. Like it's a half joke. I'm not running out there, getting shipping containers and 10,000 rounds of ammo. But you know what? It doesn't hurt to have, a sack of rice in the pantry, and it doesn't hurt to have a few things just set aside, nothing crazy, but a few things set aside that you go, okay, my family aren't going to go hungry quickly. If it's a protracted situation, well, obviously that's more complicated, but I've got some buffer. I don't have to worry about shelves going dry this week, because so long as that gets ironed out in the next couple of days or next week or so, we're good. We've got some buffer there. I think that's a good position to live your life all the time. And I think it's certainly a position you want to be putting yourself in right now. So I'm not suggesting there's no problem. There is a problem. And part of the problem is the prices still have not risen high enough on fuel, and we're still misallocating the fuel that we have. But I don't think this is going to turn into some sort of an existential crisis. This isn't going to turn into Mad Max. But there are people who are profiting off that kind of fear mongering, and that is frustrating.
Yeah, 100%. All right, next one. Things just keep getting worse for the Victorian Liberal Party.
Okay, what's the latest on this? Because I saw that this article existed, but I haven't read it. Take us through it.
Okay, so now basically Jess Wilson is asking for the president to step down. So right. What's his name? It's in here somewhere. Basically, they're all at war with each other. So Moira Deeming has taken time off.
Phil Davis.
Phil Davis, there you go. They want him to step down because apparently it's his fault that the pre-selection went the way it did. It's come out that Dinesh said he wasn't going to step back, but the Liberal Party is like, no, we're not taking you. They're trying to rush, sorry, I'm about to sneeze, another pre-selection. And it's just a basket case, sorry.
Can we go to the top of this article and actually just read through a little bit, because I'm quite interested to see what is happening now. So what we got, the Victorian Liberal Party has actively moved to keep Moira Deeming out of Parliament, inviting challengers to nominate against her for a spot in the upper house. So in other words, we didn't get rid of her first time around. Let's have another crack. It comes as the Herald Sun can reveal Mrs. Deeming, who was deselected as a candidate on Sunday, is a hotly contested pre-selection battle. On Tuesday, advised opposition leader Jess Wilson that she would be taking a period of personal leave until after Easter. I do not blame her after what they've put her through. Hours later, the party's state executive announced that it would reopen applications for endorsements for the first position of the party's Western Metropolitan Region ticket in what has been described by some MPs as a declaration of war. Yeah, that's pretty poor form when she was clearly the second place runner, clearly well supported, and she's the incumbent. And then the first place runner gets eliminated for very valid reasons. That's pretty poor. But senior Liberal operatives have said the move was necessary under the party's constitution, and a limited nomination period was set to limit applications and bolster Mrs. Deeming's chances. Okay, I don't know that technical detail. That might be true. I don't know. Can we scroll down?
Yeah.
The pre-selection process descended into farce on Monday after it was deemed Dinesh Guruseti who beat there. Okay, so we know about that. For those of you that don't know what's going on here, go back to Monday's live. Okay, so that seems like the new information there basically is the war between Phil Davis and Jess Wilson. And the process to try and actually get a nomination, get a candidate. And Mrs. Deeming has also been sounded out by multiple other parties, including the Libertarian Party, Democratic Labour Party, and One Nation. Everyone else wants her, except the party that she's actually in. It's quite astonishing. Look, I've known Moira since very early in her political career, since very early in her time, so only a couple of years now. But I've watched her walk through this. And I mean, hey, the whole of Australia is you don't have to know her to see that she has held herself with incredible dignity.
Yeah.
Under some of the most disgusting treatment. And you and I have talked about this. You're not someone who wants to play the victim card. I'm only being treated this way because I'm a woman. But we've talked about the fact that there is a level of savagery that seems to be reserved for women that I just don't see men being subjected to. And I think Moira Deeming's experience is one of those instances. There is no way in hell that she would have been treated the way that she's been treated by her own party if she was a man. There just isn't. For whatever reason, the psychology is different. I don't know why this is true, but it is true. And I'm not a feminist by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not someone who's going to be out there bleeding heart for women just because they're women. But there is a level of savagery that I just don't see it appear against other men.
Well,
and
I was going to say, like, even just comments made on our content from men is horrific at times. Like, I don't take it personally, but I look at that and I go, what sane person thinks it's acceptable to write that on the internet?
To write that. In public. But Moira Deeming has held herself with astonishing dignity and incredible poise. The way that she, for example, let's just as another, for instance, she goes into that pre-selection and she comes out and she does not talk to the media on the way in or on the way out.
Something big's just been released. Sorry, keep going.
She could have badmouthed. She could have grandstanded. She could have done any one of a number of different things. She has kept her dignity all the way through. For this to be the person that the Liberal Party are literally destroying themselves to remove from their ranks, is just disgusting. And to have destroyed, I can't say destroyed, to have put her in a position where she needs to take personal leave. I take that to be an indication. I don't know this, but I take that to be an indication that she's experiencing the stress of this.
Oh, 100%. As if you couldn't. Having that much
exactly, who couldn't?
Having just gone through a trial. And then the other thing is too, remember, they tried to oust her. She has to sit in that party room with people who vehemently hate her.
Yeah.
You know, like that, if that happened anywhere other than Parliament, if that happened in a workplace, HR would be having a field day. Okay, but we seem to think it's okay in Parliament.
I had exactly this thought. Political parties are private organizations. Do they not come under the sort of the usual standards that would apply in any professional workplace? I have to think that there would be some pretty serious violations going on in how she's being treated.
Well, I'm just going to pull this up. I wasn't going to go here, but let me grab it out. Nicole Werner put up something. Where is she? So a lot of people don't like how successful Nicole Werner's social media is, but it's been amazing. All right, I'm going to share this with you quickly before I share the other good news.
This is the MP that you've shared one or two of her reels before. She's quite clever.
She's Victorian.
She did that one showing the spending, showing the $15 billion in waste. Yeah,
she does. Like whoever is on her team, her and her team do sensational social media. So if you guys are interested, it's Nicole Werner MP. This is her first term in Parliament too. She's quite new, but she put this up, and I think this is worth reading. She wrote, so she's obviously of Asian descent. Yeah. It's been 2.5 years since I was elected to Parliament. People often ask me what has surprised me the most about my job. What has surprised me most is the nastiness in the chamber.
Yeah.
We trust in politicians, with trust in politicians at an all-time low, Victorians are looking for better representation. Every single day, I give my all to fight for our community. I don't apologise for my passion or for calling out the Labor government and the Premier for their failings. But I note that in my time here, the nastiness and disrespect has only gotten worse. This week alone, I have sat across the table as senior government ministers have verbaled me and my colleagues with disparaging comments like, "You're a waste of space, oxygen thief, you're a disgrace, sit down before you embarrass yourself, no one cares what you have to say, fool." In my time here in Parliament, I've been ridiculed for how I speak, had rude personal remarks hurled at me, and have been persistently mimicked and mocked. I'm the first to be robust and fiery in the chamber, but I do it respectfully in debate and on the record, not off the record in a tirade of abusive commentary thinking no one will even hear about it. But today I'm calling it out. People are sick of this type of nasty politics, but bullying is not okay in any workplace. What would not be appropriate in another workplace is commonplace here. Since I've been here and the further I have progressed, the personal attacks have only intensified. Personal attacks about my ethnicity, my faith, and my family are abhorrent. Labor should hang its head in shame.
I couldn't agree more, but I can't help but reflect that, and I'm not accusing Nicole Werner of anything, but given that the party of which she is a member is treating one of its own members as badly as it is, you kind of go, well, that last comment about Labor should hang its head in shame. No, there is a toxic culture that the Uniparty, Liberal and Labor, have cultivated in all of our houses of Parliament across Australia over decades. This is deemed acceptable because both sides have contributed to it and accepted it. She cops it from the other side because she's an accepted member of the Liberal Party. Moira Deeming has copped it from her own side because they realised, oh, hang on, she's a real conservative. We don't want one of those around here.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you watch any of the parliamentary sittings, right? And the way they yell at each other, the way they speak at each other, I find it disgusting. These are paid representatives of us getting paid exorbitant salaries to behave in that caliber. Yeah. Like it's just the whole thing's a disgrace.
So here's the thing. There is no other context. You could not be a member of a local Rotary club and carry on at their AGM the way that our politicians carry on in Parliament. Nor could you be a member of the largest and most valuable corporation where there's billions of dollars at stake and passions run high. You still couldn't behave yourself that way in that context. You couldn't even behave yourself that way on a regular basis at your local cricket club. They might tolerate it a little bit, but you start to do that sort of stuff on a consistent basis, you're out. The lines get drawn sooner or later in basically every other context. It is astonishing to me that we think that this is normal, and it's this place that's exempt from the basic rules of decency. It's quite astonishing. Yeah. Anyway, you said there was breaking news.
I do. So let me just pull the article up. Sorry, where is it? Okay, so I think we talked about this a while ago now, over a year ago. Operation Richmond, does that ring any bells for you?
No.
Okay, so let me bring this up to screen.
Operation Richmond.
This is a corruption report into Daniel Andrews. And this has been done through IBAC. And this is just a report. So remember, IBAC don't really have a whole lot of teeth, but they've been putting together this report, and this has been going on for a while now. So I'm just going to read this to you. Findings from a major corruption investigation involving former Premier Daniel Andrews are set to be finally made public ahead of this year's state election. IBAC Commissioner Victoria Elliott said on Wednesday she planned to publish the findings from the watchdog's long-awaited Operation Richmond before July 1st. Perfect timing. That is when campaigning starts for the state election, by the way. The move could deliver a devastating blow to Labor's election hopes and amplify concerns around integrity and corruption amid the ongoing Big Build scandal. Operation Richmond has been one of the most secretive operations in the history of IBAC and has involved scores of witnesses being called before secret hearings. The investigation is understood to have probed the United Firefighters Union role in the amalgamation of the Metropolitan Fire Brigade and the Country Fire Authority in Fire Services Victoria. It is understood it began with a complaint after a complaint was lodged with IBAC by the state opposition alleging misconduct on the part of the government in its dealings with the union. Conversations with members of the government and its support for the ALP forms part of the intercepted material and are also understood to be key to the probe. Senior government MPs, including Daniel Andrews, emerged as figures of interest during the investigation. Publication of Operation Richmond's final report has been delayed by years because of legal challenges going all the way to the High Court. That process is now almost over. This is an important part of the process in procedural fairness. IBAC is committed to publishing the Operation Richmond report as soon as possible, with a view to publication before the end of the financial year. Interesting.
Yeah, okay. All right. So this is specifically around the merger of the Rural Fire Brigade and the Metropolitan Fire Brigade into, what is it, Fire Services Victoria, I think they call them now. I remember when that happened, and I remember it had the stench of corruption around it at the time. And you're right, I did go quiet, and I'd even forgotten the name of the investigation. So that will be interesting. It's not corruption across the government. It is corruption in relation to the merger of the rural and the metropolitan fire services. So it's a bit more narrow in its scope, but still should be good.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting because, I mean, at this point, and I've heard this from some birdies, right? I can never reveal my sources, but birdies very close to people in Parliament have told me that the knives are out for Jacinta, for Dan, particularly from the non-socialist faction of the Labor Party. And as much as they kind of want to win the election, they also they want to see these heads roll, and they're willing to throw their people under the bus. Yeah. I think if this report comes out and there is hints or allegations of misconduct or, you know, even corruption, honestly, I think that will be the remaining domino that just go boom, 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 boom. Because what's to be gained by having Jacinta at the helm anymore? Nothing.
There was speculation a week ago that Jacinta was about to have a challenge, blah, blah, blah. And you've always got to take this stuff with a big grain of salt. I didn't repost any of that speculation because I looked at it and went, I think this is just smoke. Sometimes where there's smoke, there actually isn't fire. And I think that was just smoke at that point in time. I wouldn't be surprised if the other members of her party want her to go down at this election in much the same way as Joan Kirner. So for those that don't know, Joan Kirner was installed as the Premier of Victoria over the top of John Cain. John Cain had been very much a Daniel Andrews figure. He had been popular. He had been in for a while. He had presided over massive levels of corruption and massive levels of debt and spending and economic carnage. His position became untenable when they went looking for a replacement. Instead of one of the other men stepping forward, and this is back in whenever it was. It was I think South Australia had just gotten Australia's very first female premier in history only a few months before Joan Kirner was installed. So it was a pretty unusual thing for a woman to actually get any of these jobs. Instead of one of the men stepping forward and going, "Hey, I'll run," they all stepped back, and they went, "Here, Joan.
Yeah.
Here you go. We're a progressive state. Victoria's a wonderful place. We've got a woman premier. Look at that." And of course, it was a poison chalice. They were tactically doing that. It served two purposes for them. It meant that they weren't the one that went down at the election, and their career was not over. But number two, it got rid of her as a competitor. They tricked her essentially into destroying and derailing her own political career, and they got rid of her that way. And I said, when Jacinta Allen took over, you can go back into my social media, I said it. This is Joan Kirner all over again, right? And this is exactly what's playing out. And I actually think that the men within the other leaders within the Victorian Labor Party don't want to roll Jacinta Allen now. They want her to take the party into the next election so that it's her career that is ended and not theirs. Because I think they're looking at it going, this is about as unwinnable as an election can be. And so, I actually don't expect a leadership challenge against Jacinta Allen. Beg your pardon. This report might change that. If there is something really bad implicating Jacinta personally, then they might have to move, just because it makes them look weak if they don't. But
there's no incentive for Ben Carroll to roll Jacinta either. This is the thing. So people are like, oh, why won't they get rid of her? Because it's likely at this stage, unless something catastrophically goes wrong with the Liberal Party or One Nation, it is likely that Labor will lose Victoria. Ben Carroll, if he rolls Jacinta now and then goes and loses the election, he loses his chance to be the Labor leader. Why would you?
And his career is over.
He'll get the job by default if she loses either her seat or they lose the election.
And they would believe, oh, it'll be a one-term thing. We'll be in opposition for one term. We'll be right back. They'll, if One Nation will make a mess of it and everyone will hate them and we'll be right back. That's what happened when they lost to Dennis Napthine. Who was the leader? Was it Dennis Napthine was the leader at the election? Anyway, and he turned out to be absolutely worse than useless. He went into the election promising that he would release the contract for the cancelled, or the costs and all the details of the cancelled East-West link. And then as soon as he got into power, he said, oh, I'm not going to do that. Anyway, this is that playing out all over again. I think they don't want to roll Jacinta Allen, and it's going to be hard for them not to, because it's just going to get worse. But I think actually they're just going to stand back and let this train wreck barrel on in all the way to the election. It destroys her career, gets her out of their way, and then they can fight over the remnants, Lord of the Flies style, and try and rebuild for the following election.
Yeah, I think so too. So yeah, well, I will say this. I think I've said this before, but Victoria will be the first to change. I know everyone thinks Victoria is a write-off, and look, there's part of me that also thinks that too, but Victoria has to lead the change, right? We are the ones doing it the worst. We have got the most corrupt Labor Party across the nation. We've got so many issues here. If One Nation pull off even like a little bit of what they did in South Australia here, even if One Nation and the coalition don't win, but all of a sudden they get all these new seats, that shows you how much change is happening in Victoria. We had a stronghold with the Greens through COVID. So Samantha Ratton, Animal Justice Party, I've forgotten his name, and Fiona, the Sex Party, right? Those three were the three people who had a chokehold on this state, all progressives, all of them, right? At the moment, the balance of power is once again with the Greens and the progressives. For Labor to get anything through, they just have to tickle them and off they go. What we need is, I obviously hope Labor lose, but what we need is a stacked upper house full of One Nation and Liberals. Not that the Liberals do well, but like anything but Labor at this point, right? And I'd love to see Libertarians get in there, but you've said the same as me on that. That's what we need. And I think Jess Wilson saying that she won't make a deal with One Nation is terrible because I think she's going to have to. I think we're going to have a hung parliament. I think that Liberal and One Nation and some independents will have to form a government together. I really do.
So I'm just double checking the Victorian rules because it's been a little while since I've looked at them. Okay. So the entire upper house is up for election every election. Okay, so they don't do what South Australia or Australia do, where only half of the upper house is up for election each time. It is the entire thing is up for election each time. Okay, so what that means is that it's possible for it to be transformed in a single election. That was what I was just double checking, was sort of setting expectations and thinking, well, if only half the seats are up for grabs anyway, then that slows down the speed with which the upper house can be changed. But actually in Victoria, it can be changed much more quickly than that. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think we need to see some lower house seats go to One Nation. I think that's going to be really important in the lead up to then the following federal election, that actually does happen. I think it's very, very doable. What's going to get tricky? So I did a video, I haven't released it yet, but I've done a video detailing the results in South Australia. And this is relevant. I think this is one of the topics we had for today anyway. And I think this is really relevant. I went through, actually, let me get here. Let me get that up as a screen share, because we need to look at this and understand some of the details of what's happened here. Have we got that? Yes. Okay. So let me just move that over there so I can kind of see what it's doing. All right. So this is in the House of Assembly. So this is the lower house. We can see there, Pauline Hanson's One Nation, 22.5%, which is a full 3 percentage points over the Liberal Party. However, in the lower house, where have they put it now? There it is. They have 4 lower house seats, whilst the Liberal Party have 5. So firstly, why does that happen? Some people are crying foul. They're saying that it's corruption. No, it's not that simple. One Nation enjoyed broad support, and that gets you seats in the upper house, which we'll see in just a moment. But you actually need high levels of localized support to win a lower house seat. You've got to get to that 50% plus mark, which is obviously a much bigger hurdle to cross. And so that's something that One Nation need to work on for Victoria, is having really strong candidates that can actually get them over that 50% mark in a localized area. But broad support still helps, but it helps in the upper house. So these are the upper house results. We've got One Nation on 24.4%. We've got the Liberal Party on 17.5%. So that's near as makes no difference to 7 percentage points difference between them. That's a phenomenal gap between them. The result is that Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party, oh no, they're not showing it here, but they have, let me try and find, so 2.9 quotas. It's been confirmed they've won 3 upper house seats. The Liberal Party, it's been confirmed, have only won 2 upper house seats. So that's how that works. Broad support gets you seats in the upper house, but you need strong localized support to get seats in the lower house. But let me show you a detail that really matters here. So going through at some of these, let's look at Mount Gambier, which is a seat that was won by an independent, Travis Fatchen. Now, you remember how the Liberal Party made a pretty big deal out of the fact that they were preferencing One Nation above Labor, right? Do you remember that?
Mm.
They made a pretty big deal all about how they're doing the right thing, preferencing One Nation above Labor. But they didn't preference One Nation second. They would put other people above One Nation, just not Labor. And in a seat like Mount Gambier, and there's another seat where it really mattered as well, this is what made all the difference. So it ended up being a showdown between Travis Fatchen, the independent, and Anne-Marie Loaf for One Nation. In the end, Travis Fatchen won by quite a lot. Well, interestingly, won by about just under 10%. The Liberal Party polled 12%, 12.5% primary. They put One Nation in number 3. Guess who they put in number 2? Travis Fatchen. So it was Liberal Party preferences that determined the outcome of this seat, right? Now, that's an important detail as these parties are thinking about and strategizing their preference deals for the Victorian state election coming up. The individual seats matter and the individual details within those seats matter. I'll give you one more example before we move on. I'm just waiting for this page to load. The next example I will give you is the seat of Cavill. That's right. I had to remind myself the seat of Cavill, which I will find just here. Now, here we have, it came down to Labor versus an independent, Matt Schultz. Now, this is nowhere near as clear cut because One Nation actually polled below Matt Schultz. So Matt Schultz performed really well. The Liberal Party performed actually really well as well. But here's the funny thing about this particular seat is One Nation would have polled well from the Sarah Game Fair Go party, which only got a tiny number of seats because Sarah Game is a former One Nation, would have polled well from Family First, would have polled well from one or two of the other very small independents. And depending on whether they came in ahead of or behind the Liberals at that point, where the Liberals' preferences went would have mattered between One Nation and Matt Schultz. Well, guess where they went? They went to Matt Schultz. So it was a moot point. One Nation were actually taken out of the fight completely because it no longer mattered whether they came in ahead of the Liberal Party or whether they came in behind. It didn't matter what order they got eliminated in because Liberals were sending their voters' preferences or directing their voters to preference this independent. So this is much less clear cut. In the case of Mount Gambier, it's super clear cut. It was the Liberals' preferences that cost them that seat. They got 26%, which is fantastic. And if the Liberals' preferences had come their way, they would have absolutely won over the top of Travis Fatchen, but they didn't because the Liberals' preferences went to Travis Fatchen. So Liberal Party preferences are going to make all of the difference in the Victorian election. We've seen a great result in South Australia, 4 lower house seats, 3 upper house seats. A word of warning, there will be a recount on one of the lower house seats, so that could go the other way. The difference is only 77 votes right now, so that could legitimately change under a recount. But as things stand right now, 4 lower house seats, 3 upper house seats, which is the same number as the Liberal Party, by the way. The Liberal Party got 2 upper house seats and 5 lower house seats, 7 in both cases. And we could see a very similar thing happen in Victoria, only instead of only being 7 seats, we're going to be talking 15 plus seats each, in my opinion, in Victoria.
Yep. Well, I wonder how Peter Fitz feels now. He's going to have egg on his face, isn't he?
Well, you know, we've talked about the pickle, the dill. There's an online, for those who don't know what we're referring to, the gherkin, the gherk, the snarky gherkin is what he called himself. It seems to be a pretty well operated page. It certainly does all the right things. I would say they're using a lot of AI to help inform their content, and they've gotten very, very popular.
What's it called? The what?
He calls himself the Gherk, Gherk. And he's created an AI kind of avatar of this gherkin that sort of drinks coffee and says sarcastic things. And he came out on election night saying, oh, the South Australian Election Commission is saying that One Nation have got 0 seats, so much for an orange wave. It wasn't even a ripple. How embarrassing for them, blah, 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 blah. Now, he must have known, and if he didn't know, then he's such an idiot, but he must have known because the South Australian Electoral Commission had said, don't trust the estimates on our website at the moment because they've all been done on the basis of a 2-party preferred count, which mirrors last election. It doesn't reflect the change in polling with the rise of One Nation. And so it's not going to be accurate. They'd already come out and said, our website isn't going to be accurate on election night. We will update it as the numbers come in, which they did. And now it turns out One Nation have definitely won at least 3 and probably won 4 lower house seats. But I don't expect an apology from the snarky gherkin anytime soon. I don't expect him to reach out to his hundreds of thousands of followers and say, actually, guys, I misled you and lied to you, and I gave you a whole bunch of copium on election night.
I can't find this guy.
For clicks. The Gherk.
Yeah, I can't find it.
You.
Blocked me?
Who would block you, Carly? Let me just go to my...
I don't know, but I block everyone. Can I just say, I am sweltering in my studio. It is so hot.
I am very pleased to hear that you're the one suffering this time.
It's very hot up here, and I'm feeling suffocated.
Okay, so what have we got? I think I've got him here. My internet is struggling. All right.
That rural internet, huh?
Oh, yeah. If I go here, and if I go share, and if I go tab, I think it's this one. I hope it's this one. If I get the wrong one, please don't judge me. At the stage. There we go. This is what he calls himself.
Oh, it's on Facebook.
And he just,
on X.
Yeah, he's on Facebook, and he just puts up, all this sort of stuff. He's sort of got this avatar of this gherkin here, and he just puts himself in the corner, and he says kind of nonsense, sort of stuff. Pretty long-winded, and heavy on the AI assist. I don't think he has AI write it, but it's pretty obvious that he has AI assist, and then he just kind of lightly edits it. And this is all it takes to become an influencer these days. You don't even need your face on there. You can just be an animated gherkin.
Well, the interesting thing about all of these, I hate saying the word influencer. I just feel like it's really disparaging comments, but people of social influence, people of audience, is that it's actually very easy to build an audience if you want to, right? Like if you want to blow up quickly, you can.
If you don't care about whether you're making your audience's lives better, it's very easy.
You ignore your common sense for a second. If you want to blow up a channel very quickly, it is very easy. Rage bait's a great way of doing it. Saying all the in things is a great way of doing it. Getting people really outraged. That's the easy way to build an audience. But the problem is once 100%. You get that audience, then what do you do with it? Then it becomes hard to sustain your audience. And also, if they're there for the wrong reasons, that audience will eat you alive. So,
and that's where you get audience capture from.
Yeah. Things like this, I'm like,
I'm starting to fade. My painkillers are helping, but only a certain degree.
I'm glad you're saying that, because I am. Do you know how I know I'm melting? Is because I have an Easter bunny, and it's very soft. So it's not just me. My chocolate is all. Look at it. It's melty.
Yeah. So Carly, when I say I'm hot, it's because patches of sweat are being left by my arms on the surface of the desk. So I think we have slightly different calibrations for sweltering.
Melty chocolate's a pretty good indication that it's hot up here.
All right, just quickly, because we've covered actually most of what I had on my list that I wanted to cover.
Well, to be honest, we kind of did it. We talked about a lot on Monday, particularly with Moira and that. Well, there hasn't been massive shifts.
There's a few evolutions in stories. So the E-Karen's come out saying that she's going to proceed with lawsuits on 5 different social media companies. Now, what's interesting, and I've got to go and read this, is the Free Speech Union, Dr. Ruben Kirkham, who is outstanding, has actually just published a piece, and I just saw it then as I was on looking for the Gherk. His thesis is basically that the government has already abandoned enforcement. So I want to read his piece and get his thoughts on this, because that's interesting. I will approach his comments with an open mind, because I've got a lot of time for him. But as things stand right now, yesterday the news broke that the e-safety commissioner has come out and said that she's going to sue basically the 5 biggest of the social media platforms because they're not taking reasonable steps. Now, of course, the regulation, just to recap, they had to take reasonable steps to ensure that no one under the age of 16 was using any of their social media platforms. The regulation did not define what a reasonable step was. Now, this is an important little linguistic trick to pay attention to, because they use this all the time. What they said was, hey, we don't want to be prescriptive because we don't want to limit the actions that platforms take. And we also don't want to be prescriptive because technology changes and time changes, and what's needed now might be different to what's needed in the future. So we're just going to write reasonable steps, and we're going to leave it up to each company to figure out what that means in their case with their particular platform and change it as technology goes forward. When you sit down and you explain that to a politician, the politician goes, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. What they've actually done is given themselves a blank check. Because this is a completely undefined standard, a completely undefined regulation, they get to decide in their exclusive wisdom whether someone is compliant with it or not, which means that they've got all the power. So what they've done is they've written themselves a blank check to spend taxpayers' money on enforcement, which means they always run out of money, which means they need more money, more budget. We need more people to be able to do the enforcement. Oh my goodness, this has turned out to be so much of a bigger problem than we ever thought it was. And by the way, did you know, I don't even know if you would know this, Carly, bureaucrats are paid in a class structure and how many people you have under your command influences how much you get paid.
We've talked about this before.
Okay, we have, yeah. And so somehow, for some strange reason, all these bureaucrats end up needing more money, more budget. We have to bring on more people into my department. I wonder why. Well, because that directly influences their paycheck. So what happens then is we've got the e-Karen turning around now and being very specific about the things that these platforms are not doing. These platforms have not removed enough accounts. They have not provided a way for people to report accounts for under 16 years of age. They have not done certain things with their age verification. They're being quite specific. And that begs the question, why couldn't you be specific about what they had to do when you wrote the regulation? If you can be specific about all the ways they're failing to meet the regulation, doesn't that mean you could have written a specific regulation, surely? And so we've got this situation where they've given themselves a blank check to run these prosecutions on the taxpayer's dime. And what this does, the government likes this as well. This isn't just good for the bureaucrats. It is, because you can, as a bureaucrat, you can build an entire career based around working your way up the e-safety office, continuously fighting the good fight against those evil social media companies who just never quite seem to be compliant with the regulation, right, which was deliberately written to never be complied with. But also from the politicians' point of view, this gives them leverage over the social media companies in the same way as they have leverage over mainstream media, because they provide an enormous amount of the advertising budget. They control the regulatory approvals for bandwidth on broadcast channels and these sorts of stuff. So they've got the broadcast media by the short and curlies already, but they don't have social media by the short and curlies. If you have a hound dog and attack dog department that can drag these companies back into federal court at any moment, at a moment's notice, then you've got leverage now. And that's exactly what the government has given themselves with the e-safety office. So this is the state of play now. I said this was going to lead to lawsuits. It has. The e-Karen, I think, is doing exactly what her political masters want her to do.
Yeah.
And I think she will be richly rewarded when she departs the role later this year to go off and find something else to completely fuck up.
Oh, she'll get like parachuted into some beautiful board position somewhere where she barely has to show up and gets paid an obscene amount of money for it.
Okay, here's a fun little thing that I've been enjoying thinking about. So she's said that she's not going to ask for a contract extension at the end of, I think it's the end of June. I think it's up at the end of the financial year. So she'll be leaving the e-safety office. She does not have another role lined up. Here's the question for her. Does she go back to America? Because remember how she's been refusing to appear before the House Judiciary Committee. I think Representative Jim Jordan has been, beg your pardon, rather cross with her.
She'll get in trouble for she was in contempt and they're threatened to get her. So
correct. Now they haven't, but can she return to the US? And if she does she make it through immigration without being arrested?
I don't think she'd go under Trump.
I don't think she'd go under Trump either. I think she's got to find somewhere in Europe. And of course, the Europeans would welcome her with open arms. But I think she's got to find somewhere in Europe to go and work for 2 or 3 years until Trump is gone and hope that a Democrat wins the next presidential election.
She's a dual citizen, right? She's both American and yeah.
That's the problem. If she was just an Australian citizen, a contempt proceeding in the House of Congress would be meaningless against her.
Yeah.
But she is an American citizen.
Well, there you go. Well, on that note, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to faint if I sit in here much longer.
I'm struggling.
Dying.
Sorry, guys. I'm on heavy medication. My health is improving compared to what it was a few days ago, but it's still going to be a week or so, I think, before I'm really out of the woods. So yeah, 2 hours is all you're getting. Sorry.
Well, I just don't think there's enough to talk about, to be honest.
We could make shit up. We could
I mean, we could. I have another show to tell. So you haven't been here
with the shows and the tells. Crying
you haven't
out
been
loud.
here, but this is my
Now listen. You have shows and tells. Do you have any shut up and listens?
No.
Do you have that? No? Okay.
Have you met me? So you know how you're prepping. This is how I'm prepping. This is my current thing. This is a blanket in progress.
Careful, you're getting dangerously close to gay pride there.
No, this is autumn variegated yarn. This is a crochet blanket. It's going to be. I can't even show you. How cute! How fun! This is my new
cool.
thing.
Well, you enjoy your new thing. I'm going to enjoy signing off. And honestly, I need to go and have a nap. That is a luxury that I can afford today. And I think I'm going to go and do it because my body is telling me I should not be awake right now.
Why is it hot? It's very hot. It's meant to be April, and it's like 30 degrees up here. It's like
probably because you've got lights on in a tiny little bedroom with no air conditioning.
Yeah, that'll be it.
Probably.
Well, on that note, we haven't grifted. Do you want to grift quickly? Like,
grift.
Guys,
pay for my
Kofi.
funeral. Yeah, do that.
Kofi is where you support the Oddcast specifically. So if you like the show, you want to buy us a coffee, you want to contribute to the Oddcast, Kofi is where you do it.
And we are very grateful to everyone that is there. Topherfield.com is where you find all of my stuff, as well as the Getting Ahead in the Game Masterclass, T-shirts, hoodies, books, DVDs, all that good gear. And you might as well plug your AI course.
So AI course starts next week, and you guys get this book included. This is the AI Advantage. And
so
given
pretty.
everything that's isn't it? It is really pretty. Come on, it's really pretty. Given everything that's just happened in Australia with Anthony Albanese signing a big exclusive deal with Anthropic, I was going to bring that up, but I didn't want to bore you guys. There's a lot going on in AI. So if you want to learn about AI, my masterclass is carlzjsoda.com. It's $99. Sign up.
Was it Anthropic who just accidentally leaked their entire source code? I think it was them. Are they the ones doing OpenClaw?
They got in a fight. Yes. No. OpenClaw is a different thing.
Is it?
Claude. Yeah. That's Claw. Claude is Anthropic. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Anyway.
Cool. Anyway, I'm out.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you all have a lovely night, and we'll see you Monday night for a live.
Bye. If I'm alive.